Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Santi. I'm from Class B 2018. I am the 5th semester. My major is English for Specific Purposes, and my lecturer is Mr. Adi Isma. And then in this moment, I would talk about what I have gathered when I learn ESP. Okay, the first is chapter 1, the origin of ESP. The first is new word demands. The end of the 1945 World War saw an expansion of the war, which was dominated by two forces, namely technology and trade, which went on without stopping and resulted in the demand for international language. The second is there is a revolution in linguistics. Traditionally, the purposes of linguistics is to describe the rules of use the English language, namely grammar. In English lesson, there are important differences between commercial and technical English. The third is focus on learners. Learners have different needs and interests, which will have an important influence on their motivation. Learn and therefore on their motivation to learn, and therefore on effectiveness of their learning. The second is chapter 2, ESP development. There are four ways to make it easier for us to understand ESP. The first is special language concept. In understanding ESP, it's more important to understand grammatical the first, because ESP, the text grammar context use is high level grammar context. The second is theoretical analysis or discourse. After understanding grammars, student must be able to understand the meaning in a sentence in the ESP text. And to make it easier to understand meaning of language, we need theoretical in understand language. The third is target situation analysis. The purpose of the studying ESP is so that we can condition how students use the language they are learning. And the last is abilities strategies. There are three tracks that underline the origin of ESP, namely needs. The first is need, the second new ideas about learning, and the last new ideas about language. Okay, next I will explain the chapter 3. ESP is an approach. There are three branches in ESP, namely English for Specific Technology or EST, English for Business and Economic or EBA, and English for Social Science or ESS. ESP is not specific variable problem in teaching English, and ESP is not just a matter of science and grammar words for scientists. ESP is also not different in kind from other forms of language teaching. ESP is a language teaching approach where all content and methods are based on student reasons for learning. Next, I will explain the chapter 4, overview of language. An outline of the grammar affecting ESP. The first is classical or traditional grammar. Classical language knowledge can depend learners' knowledge of how language develops. The second is structural language. In the structural description, grammar is described in the term of semantic structure which carries basic proposition in form the statement, like negative, interrogative, and imperative, and etc. The third is transformational generative. And 5, grammar change from traditional to modern. And the last, language variation and analysis, functional or notional grammar. And next I will explain the chapter 5, learning theory. There are some theory when we learn ESP. The first is theory of behaviorism. Theory of behaviorism is learning as habit formation. The second, theory of mentalism. Theory of mentalism is thinking as the rules. The third is cognitive theory. Code cognitive theory is the points that learning must be thinking characters. The four is affective factors, or learning as emotional beings. And the last is learning and acquisition. Okay, next I will explain the chapter 6, need analysis. Target needs are learning needs are what students need to do in learning. The first is need. Every student has different need to achieve the target. The second is differentiation not only identify needs but also have to identify lack of student who need to be analyzed with the abilities of student. The last is desire of the student in the form of motivation based an important role in language learning. Okay, the chapter 7 is learning approach. Learning model is a process where raw data about learning needs interpreted to produce a unified of teaching learning experience, the main purpose of which examining a particular stage of knowledge. To develop teaching method, material, and establish evaluation products by which progress against target will be measured. There are 3 types of approach, namely the first is design-centered language, the second is skill-centered learning model, and the last learning-centered approach. Okay, I think enough from me, and I will give you the conclusion what the English for specific special purposes is a new approach in the teaching and use of English for special fields and studies that are in accordance with the needs to the field of kind and the profession of the English user. I think enough from me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.